I had the pleasure of meeting Mark a few weeks ago now. I think, though COVID time, a few weeks feels like a year ago at this point. And met Mark when some of my colleagues and I were trying to understand, well, how do we best connect up so many of these disparate groups and communities that were coming together to address COVID-19 and the shortages of PPE, and particularly focusing on the logistics and supply chain. And had after weeks of talking to a variety of organizations and maker spaces and understanding the state of things, and we started thinking about building a platform to help support that. And then we found PPE Logistics, which we went, great, we don't need to build this, it already exists. And I'd heard of Tulip in the past, and was very fortunate to get a tour of the platform, and I have just been blown away both by the modularity of the platform and how it's been constructed for scalability in a way that can really support a variety of organizations and networks, and how quickly they have applied that to the problem at hand around the shortages of PPE. So we had a great time geeking out on a phone call about all the different things that it does. So I will stop there, and I will let Mark share the great work that they're doing over at PPE Logistics and Tulip.
Thank you for that introduction, Madeline. I think what I'd like to do is just kind of try to first answer the question that was posed as concise as I can, and then maybe share with you some slides about what we did specifically in this world. So the question was how to distribute fabrication of COVID-19 supplies. And just a little background on myself, I'm actually a manufacturer, not really a programmer at all. My background's in manufacturing and lean manufacturing, continuous improvement, these sorts of things. But to answer that question, I don't think we're just talking about distributing fabrication. We're talking like people are capable of manufacturing things. Kareem just showed people these days have the capacity to make all sorts of wonderful things and have the ingenuity and resources to do so. But if I were to download something myself, I have a 3D printer in my room over there. If I were to download something and make an accredited product or something, what would I do with that? Who would I give it to? And how would they know that I have it, right? So I think it's more about enabling a distributed, not more about, but it's equally about enabling a distributed supply chain network and like systematically unlocking all this capacity that previously was not recognized or within that chain. So how do you unlock that? How do you realize this capacity? And I think that's a really interesting challenge. And I think we're well positioned to solve that challenge. And I can show an example of what we did to help with that. But there's a lot that can be done. Current supply chains. My cousin, she works in healthcare. She relies on some well-established supply chain that's global, that has maybe 3M having a factory somewhere, reducing costs and sending over millions of PPE and these sorts of things. But that obviously broke down in this scenario. So like I like to think in analogies. The analogy I use here, or I'd like to use in this case, is kind of silly, but like it's kind of like a pizza place. So this pizza place is making pizza for like these two organizations in their local neighborhood. They have a delivery driver. This is the established production chain that they've created, the supply chain. But suddenly, everybody around them wants pizza, and their one delivery driver cannot support this. The people who want the pizza don't even know this place is making pizza. And people around them have ovens and could make pizza if they wanted to. So that's like the challenge that I see is how do you basically enable this connection in a systematic way that lets you, I need pepperoni, this person has it, let me get some of that from that person. And you can like suddenly leverage this network to be a supply chain that works better than the traditional ones that are like well forged, right? And what I would use as an example of maybe what we could see right now that looks like a potential future state is something like a Grubhub, which is why I use the pizza, right? If I want pizza, I just type in pizza, I see a bunch of different people making pizza. There's reviews on them, so they're like qualified in some capacity. And when I want the pizza, it's a distributed network of drivers. And those people can you don't know who the driver is and you don't really care because it's the system that enables this unlocking of potential. And I think that's the situation that we're sort of seeing here. So let me show you an example of what we did. I'm going to share my screen here. But that's sort of my answer to the question. And let me share this this example here. I should, since Madeline mentioned it, and I do work for Tulip, I should mention quickly what that is. So I'm going to skip through some of these slides, but basically, Tulip is a platform that takes this idea of democratized, like distributed networks and such, and it uses that in creating software. So anyone who is not a programmer like myself, for example, can create applications very quickly. You see here is an editor. You can drag and drop. It's like PowerPoint sort of. And people are naturally using these cloud-based systems. Like a lot of these people we talk to are using Google Sheets to manage their networks. This is something of that nature, except it's, you know, it's scalable in the sense that it can be connected to your ERPs. It can be connected to, you know, other information systems and so forth, but you can change it rapidly. And as a lean practitioner, I'm a huge proponent of rapid change. So we can connect to devices and these sorts of things, but this isn't a Tulip ad. Here's what we did with Masks On. We joined a Slack channel, which is a network of people, 3D Core originally, and Masks On was trying to basically build retrofit scuba masks with 3D printed adapters so they could take filters and they could use them in place of N95s. What happened when we looked at this network and saw what they were doing is they're doing great work. They had they could make these things. They had great designers. They were prototyping and testing very thoroughly, but their logistics system was a nightmare for them to use. These are actual screenshots, except for the one in the middle, of them swimming in spreadsheets. They were like highlighting rows and copying and pasting rows. And a lot of what we saw with all the groups that we talked to during this period of time is people were following this pattern of not having a system to facilitate these activities. So where are their demands? How much inventory do they have? How are they maintaining traceability? You know, just maintaining all this, you couldn't use an ERP like a SAP or something like this because, you know, those things take a long time to integrate and they're expensive and they're not modular based on what you're doing. You have to change, like Kareem said, he had to change his manufacturing facility like overnight based on, you know, the challenges he was seeing. So I'm going to blast through this really quickly because I know I'm a little bit low on time here. But basically what we did was we connected these nodes. So volunteer courier networks, supplier warehouses and manufacturing centers, and demands from people actually looking for PPE. And we created this in a week, basically. We used the software I just showed you to build a network that could facilitate their processes and enable them to produce materials quickly. So within 5 days, we launched this. And, you know, you can just talk to some of the people who were running their operations saying, I don't know how we would have handled the quantity of these deliveries without it. Words can't express how much I love this system. I mean, it helped them do their job. It helped them succeed. So here's a map of a few weeks ago of where we delivered to using this system. The green dots are our supplier nodes. The yellow is where we've delivered to. Here's just a few metrics. At the time, I guess it was 41,000. They've delivered, you know, this is a little bit old. They've delivered, you know, just Masks On has delivered over 15,000, doing over 1,000 a day. And then we're also working with other groups who are accepting donations and putting that into their inventory, connecting it to their demands, and so forth. The way this thing is kind of imagined is there's a single application people use. So they log into their cell phone, then they assign themselves a role within this network, whether they're going to be a volunteer courier or they're going to be someone ordering materials, or maybe they're managing a network of supply sites. You'll see here that what we're doing is we're connecting these nodes together using a common system that works with their other environments. And when someone basically logs into this network, based on the role they have, it's going to enable a subset of applications that relate to them. And all of these were adapted and changed. They're continuously changing because of the nature of the platform we have. And I'll just give you a little intro as to how like the flow of this thing works. But basically what happens is someone would log in, and then, you know, they would request material through like an Amazon-like view. And then that would go into a request terminal where the suppliers could view the demands and then accept those demands. Then they could process those demands and then allocate inventory to those demands. They could process them through shipping by either going through like an Uber-like application we made, which enables drivers to log in as well and see which orders are in their network or in their area based on their coordinates. And they could say they're going to deliver those, and then it would relieve that inventory and transfer and fulfill that order. Or we could use, you know, national carriers like UPS or FedEx. So this is just a kind of an overview of how the system functions and what we built in a pretty rapid time. And I imagine something of this nature is what we want to use in a future state. I think I'm about over time at this point, but you know, I wanted to share that with you, and I think this is really exciting because there's so much capability in the future. We're going to have even more capability as devices become easier and more capable to get a 3D printer is like unheard of in the past, right? What's next? The more we can build, we'll be able to build in a distributed way. We should be able to unlock that instead of relying on these traditional supply chain networks. And I think that's it for me. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much for that, Mark. You know, I'm really impressed with this logistics system that you've, in such an agile way, have conjured. It feels like you've conjured it to manage this demand with supply. But what I appreciate the most is that you've considered the supply coming from both the maker and the more professionalized fabrication services out there.